John Clarke, who gave us Fred Dagg and more, and who gave the Australians a more nuanced satire and held mirrors up to both nations and said, look, you silly buggers, this is how you are, has died. He was 68, working brilliantly with Brian Dawes, still exposing the Australian establishment at all its absurdities and pomposities and confusion. His death was, in short, a terrible shock. And for those who go back much of a lifetime with him, a terrible loss too. John Clarke was giving us Fred Dagg in the 70s, a turning point in New Zealand television and New Zealand culture. Something was happening on screen in New Zealand then, out of the blue or green or both. At exactly the same time, Geoff Murphy was making Sleeping Dogs, a turning point in New Zealand cinema. He and John Clarke would go on to work together. Geoff was deeply shocked when he heard the news, remembering a lifetime ago now when they were young and daring and full of the hope of something new.
I don't know, I just met him round Wellington, you know, in the pub and that, you know.
And what do you remember of him?
I remember him as being extraordinarily droll. Yeah, no, he was hell of funny. Yeah, we did, I did Dag Day Afternoon with him.
Which was almost, I remember that from the time. God, when was that? Was that the 70s or the 80s?
That was it was the same time as well, man. It was the 70s.
And you just made it up as you went along, did you boys?
Well, just about. I mean, John Clarke was meant to write the script, but he never did, you know. So we just sort of boxed on as best we could.
And if you didn't really have a script, how did it work for you as the director?
Well, we had themes, you know. We knew that he was travelling to Auckland trying to find the bionic ram.
That's right, the $6 million ram.
Yeah. And so, you know, there were certain incidents that happened on the way as he asked people about it and all that sort of thing. So we would sort of get a scene together with an actor, whoever it was, and then we would talk it through, and then after about a quarter of an hour, we'd say, okay, let's have a lash at it.
Was there anything written down?
Not that I can recall.
And he was a famous extemporizer, wasn't he? So even if you had a vague sense of what he was going to say, he always said something different or something more.
Yeah, just about. Yeah, he'd take you by surprise all the time.
It was authentic and original and audacious, wasn't it, what he did? Because, I mean, there's a great tradition in New Zealand of comedy that we underestimate and forget, and that is Māori comedy and the particular and unique Māori take on the world. But Pākehā comedy was almost conspicuous by its absence, really, wasn't it?
Yeah. He was by far the funniest comic of the time.
Yeah.
You couldn't do Dag Day Afternoon today. You just couldn't do it. You know, they wouldn't let you. You know?
Well, I'd like to see you go to the Film Commission for funding on that one. Where's your script? Haven't got one. What's it about? Not quite sure yet. A bionic ram, but we'll make the rest of it up.
Yeah.
You're right. It wouldn't happen, would it?
No. The thing was that it was John Barnett financed it from contra deals.
Bloody old Barney, he can swing a deal, can't he?
Yeah. We'll use your tractor and we'll give it a full screen credit of it somewhere in the picture.
And you did?
Yeah, and you give us some money, you know, and that's how he put it together. I mean, we shot it in 6 days, you know, travelling from Wellington to Auckland at the same time and writing the script wherever we could, and, you know. So it was extremely fast, very hard work. But there's some great moments. I mean, I think the opening sequence of it was one of the best I've ever shot, which was John Clarke chopping firewood. And it's to the tune of, you know, 2001.
Yeah, Kubrick. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yeah. God, do you know I remember that? I haven't seen it since I was a youngster.
Yeah, because he'd chop the firewood and the firewood would fly up in the air, and it was like the apes, the scene with the apes.
It was his brilliance to make stuff like that work, wasn't it?
Yeah, and he did. He made it work really well. Yeah, well, I think they've lost a great one.
Geoff Murphy, talking about John Clarke, and I'm sure how upset and sad and shocked Geoff is reflects the feelings of everyone who ever worked with John Clarke and knew him or watched him or listened to him. Geoff talked about John Barnett doing contra deals to pay for that movie, and John Barnett was also responsible for giving us that footage which he owned the copyright on. Thanks, John.